Stop living off everyone else and get your own life together, Miriam, I yelled, my voice echoing off the sleek, modern walls of my condo. You think you can talk to me like that? Miriam spat back, her face flushed with anger. You're the one who's been mooching off Dad's success. I'll show you what it's like to be truly desperate. I glared at her, my hands trembling with fury. The condo, with its floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the bustling city below, felt more like a battlefield. My parents sat silently on the couch, their faces etched with worry and fatigue. Dad, once the picture of confidence, looked defeated. Mom clutched his hand, her eyes darting between us. Jared, Miriam's husband, lounged casually in one of the armchairs, scrolling through his phone as if none of this concerned him. His nonchalance only fueled my anger. Dad's success? I scoffed. You're talking about the man who lost everything because of a bad investment. Don't you see how much they're struggling? Miriam's eyes narrowed. And whose fault is that? Dad trusted you to help him with the finances, and look where we are now. I took a deep breath, trying to control the rising tide of frustration. I wasn't the one who got mixed up with a corrupt partner. I'm the one trying to fix things, taking them in and supporting them. Support? Miriam sneered. You're just showing off. Look at this place, Evelyn. You think a fancy condo makes you better than the rest of us? I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. This isn't about showing off, Miriam. It's about responsibility. Why don't you and Jared ever lift a finger to help? Jared, finally looking up from his phone, smirked. We have our ways of handling things. Maybe if you weren't so busy playing the martyr, you'd understand that. I shot him a withering look. Handling things? Is that what you call it? Leeching off others and acting like the world owes you something? Miriam stepped closer, her eyes blazing. You better watch your mouth, Evelyn. You don't know what Jared and I have been through. Actually, I said, my voice steady, I think I know enough. While you were out living your lavish lifestyle, I've been here picking up the pieces. Mom stood up, placing herself between us. Girls, please, this isn't helping anyone. We need to come together, not tear each other apart. Miriam rolled her eyes. Coming together? How about starting with Evelyn doing her fair share instead of acting like she's the only one who matters? I stepped back, my heart racing. This has to stop. We can't keep pretending everything's fine when it's clearly not. Why can't you see that, Miriam? Before Miriam could reply, Dad spoke up, his voice weak but resolute. That's enough. We're a family, and right now we need to find a way forward together. I looked at him, my anger softening. He'd always been the rock of our family, even now when he was at his lowest. Fine, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But things need to change. We need boundaries, and everyone has to contribute. No more freeloading. Miriam scoffed but didn't argue. Jared went back to his phone, uninterested in the resolution. Dad squeezed Mom's hand and she nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. As the tension in the room eased slightly, I realized this was just the beginning. The embers of conflict had been fanned into flames, and there was no telling how the fire would burn or who would be consumed by it. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over the kitchen. Mom busied herself at the stove while Dad sat at the counter, a somber look shadowing his face. I poured myself a cup of coffee, feeling the weight of last night's argument still hanging in the air. We need to talk, Mom said softly, setting a plate of scrambled eggs in front of Dad. About the situation we're in. Dad sighed heavily. Evelyn, your mother and I, there's no easy way to say this. The investment I made, it was manipulated by a corrupt partner. We've lost everything. I swallowed hard, the gravity of their words sinking in. I know, Dad. That's why I took you in. We'll get through this together. Mom's eyes welled up with tears. We had to sell what little we had left to pay off some of the debts. This is all we have now. Dad nodded, his expression weary. We're grateful for your help, Evelyn. But the burden is too much for you alone. We'll manage, I assured them, my mind racing with a million thoughts. Somehow, we'll find a way. Just as the conversation started, the doorbell rang. The last person I expected to see stepped through the door, Miriam, with her usual air of entitlement, her bags trailing behind her. Didn't think I would come, did you? Miriam smirked, dropping her bags unceremoniously in the hallway. Well, I'm here now, and I need a place to stay. I exchanged a glance with Mom, who looked both exasperated and resigned. Miriam, we're in no position to offer you anything more. She explained gently. Miriam waved her off. Oh, please, Evelyn has this big fancy condo. Surely there's room for one more. Jared had some issues at work. We need somewhere safe while it blows over. I clenched my fists. Issues, Miriam? Is that what you're calling it? Miriam's eyes flashed with irritation. Yes, issues. Now, if you could find it in your heart to be a little less judgmental, you'd understand we're family. We help each other. Dad's face hardened. A little less judgmental? Miriam, you ignored our struggles and lived in luxury while we sank. Now you come here demanding help? And you're a saint, right, Dad? Miriam shot back, her voice dripping with sarcasm. All this because of your brilliant investment. Now, unless you want a bigger scandal, you'll let us stay. Mom put a hand on Dad's arm, her voice pleading. David, this won't solve anything, but maybe with us all together we can figure it out. Fine, I said sharply, ending the debate. Miriam, you can stay, but you will follow the rules of this house, contribute where you can, and no more demands. Miriam smiled sweetly, but I could see the resentment brewing in her eyes. Of course, dear sister, we'll make it work, somehow. The room's tension thickened as Miriam and Jared settled in, bringing with them an air of manipulation and deceit. I knew this peace was fragile, ready to shatter with the slightest provocation. The real battle was yet to come, and we were all stepping onto the front lines. The sound of laughter echoed through the condo, grating on my nerves. Miriam and Jared had been here for just a week, and already their presence was suffocating. My once peaceful home now felt like a ticking time bomb. Is there something I can help with, Miriam? I asked, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice as I saw her lounging on the couch. She looked up from her magazine, a smug smile on her face. Oh, Evelyn, you're such a sweetheart. But no, Jared and I are fine. Maybe you could make us some coffee, though. I forced a smile. Sure. As I moved to the kitchen, Jared sauntered in, his eyes scanning the room like he owned the place. Nice setup you have here, Evelyn. Almost makes me forget why we're here. I bit back a retort. Coffee's brewing. It'll be ready soon. Jared leaned against the counter, his tone casual. You know, Miriam mentioned you're doing pretty well in the tech world. Any tips for someone looking to make a quick buck? I glanced at him, sensing the underlying greed in his question. Hard work and integrity. Not exactly quick, but it works, he chuckled. Integrity. Right. I'll keep that in mind. Miriam appeared in the doorway, her smile saccharine. Jared, sweetheart, why don't you give Evelyn a break? She's been so good to us. He smirked, pushing himself off the counter. Sure thing, babe. As he walked away, I turned to Miriam. We need to talk about expenses. Groceries have nearly doubled since you two arrived, and I can't cover everything. She rolled her eyes. Oh, Evelyn, always so practical. Don't worry. I'll pitch in when I can. Besides, Jared's working on something big. We'll be out of here in no time. That's what I'm worried about, I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. Days turned into weeks, and the strain grew more apparent. Miriam's demands increased, her contributions non-existent. One evening, as I went over the bills, I found myself short on funds. I confronted her in the living room. Miriam, I need you to start pulling your weight. This isn't sustainable. She looked up from her tablet, irritation flickering across her face. Evelyn, believe me, no one wants to be here more than I do, but you're making this more difficult than it needs to be. My patience snapped. Difficult? You're using up resources and giving nothing in return. Miriam stood, her eyes blazing. You think I want to be here, sponging off you? I have my own problems, Evelyn. Jared's lost his job, and we're trying to figure things out. Cut me some slack. Cut you some slack? I yelled, frustration boiling over. I've been more than patient, but this isn't working, and you know it. Miriam's face twisted with anger. You just think you're so much better, don't you? Always the martyr, always the responsible one. Get off your high horse, Evelyn. You might be the golden child now, but don't think that makes you invincible. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I'm just trying to keep this family together. Well, you're failing, she snapped, storming out of the room. My head swam, the weight of her accusations pressing down on me. The battle lines were clearly drawn, and there was no turning back. Tensions were at an all-time high, and it was only a matter of time before everything exploded. The drama was far from over, and I braced myself for the fallout. A loud knock shattered the tense silence of the morning. I opened the door to a stern-faced man clutching a file. "Is Jared Thompson here?" "Yes, why?" I replied, feeling a sense of dread. The man flashed a badge. "I'm Detective Mills. I need to speak with Mr. Thompson about an ongoing investigation." My stomach dropped. "Jared, it's for you," I called, my voice shaking slightly. Jared sauntered over, his confidence quickly fading as he saw the detective. "What's this about?" "You're under arrest for embezzlement and fraud," Detective Mills stated, pulling out handcuffs. Miriam rushed into the room, her face a mask of shock. "What? No, there must be some mistake." Jared tried to protest, but the detective was firm. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As the door closed behind them, Miriam crumpled onto the floor, tears streaming down her face. "This can't be happening. It can't be real." I knelt beside her, feeling a pang of pity despite everything. "Miriam, what did Jared do?" She shook her head. "I don't know, Evelyn. He said he had it all under control. I never asked questions." I took a deep breath. "You need to start facing reality. Whatever Jared did, it's serious. We need to figure out a plan." Miriam looked up, her eyes filled with desperation. "But what can we do? We're broke, and now he's in jail. What am I supposed to do?" "You need to cooperate with the authorities," I said firmly. "Figure out what you know and tell them. This is beyond us now." Days turned into a blur of legal paperwork and tearful phone calls. My parents tried to offer support, but the strain was evident. Every time I saw Miriam, a mix of fear and anger flashed in her eyes. One evening, after another exhausting day, I overheard Mom and Dad talking quietly in the living room. "I can't believe Jared was capable of this," Dad said, rubbing his temples. "We trusted him." Mom sighed. "I feel like we failed as parents. How did things get so wrong?" "We can't blame ourselves for their choices," Dad replied, "but we have to deal with the consequences now." Back in my room, my mind raced. I started piecing together everything I knew about Jared's work, his shady dealings, and the funds that never quite made sense. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Miriam had to have known something. The next morning, I confronted her. "Miriam, you need to come clean. Did you know what Jared was up to?" She looked affronted. "How dare you accuse me? I've done nothing wrong." "Really? Because it's hard to believe you were completely in the dark," I countered. "Believe what you want," she spat. "You always think the worst of me." "I think what the evidence shows," I replied. "And right now, it's pointing in your direction, too." Miriam's face twisted into a scowl. "You're just trying to push me out." "Well, guess what, Evelyn? Good luck dealing with this mess alone, because I'm not going anywhere." As she stormed off, I knew she was in denial. But her defiance only strengthened my resolve. I would find out the truth, no matter what. The stakes were higher than ever, and the cost of failure was something I couldn't afford. Another evening in the condo, and the air was thick with tension. Miriam was sitting at the dining table, picking at the leftovers from dinner. Dad had wanted us all to eat together, but Miriam's palpable resentment towards me turned every meal into a battlefield. "You know what your problem is, Evelyn," Miriam sneered, breaking the silence. "You think you're better than everyone else because you've got this place and that little tech startup." I looked up from my laptop, barely containing my frustration. "Miriam, I'm just trying to make sure we all survive this mess. Do you really think I wanted it to come to this?" She scoffed. "Survive? You've always been about one-upping everyone. Even in school, you had to be the top student, the perfect child." "That's not true," I said, my voice low. "I just worked hard, something you might consider trying." Miriam's face turned red with anger. "Don't you dare preach to me. You have no idea what I've been through." "Then explain it to me," I challenged, closing my laptop and facing her fully. "What have you been through that excuses all this?" She stood up, shaking with rage. "You think I wanted Jared to get arrested? You think I wanted to lose everything? We were supposed to be partners? He promised me a life of luxury, and now it's all gone." I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "Miriam, it's not about what was promised. It's about facing reality. Jared made terrible choices, and now we all have to deal with them." "Don't you get it, Evelyn?" she yelled. "It's not just about Jared. It's about you always being the hero, always getting things right, while I messed up, and now you're going to abandon me when I need you the most." "Abandon you?" I echoed, incredulous. "You moved into my home. I've been trying to help, but you refuse to accept any responsibility." Miriam's eyes filled with tears, but her expression remained defiant. "You think this is help? You're just rubbing your success in my face." "I'm not," I said quietly, "but if you keep pushing everyone away, you'll end up with nothing." She glared at me, then stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. I sank back into my chair, exhausted by the constant conflict. That night, I lay awake thinking about the path ahead. Miriam's accusations stung, but they also fueled my determination. The more she tried to drag me down, the more I realized I had to rise above it all. The next morning, I woke up early and dove into my work with renewed vigor. Every email, every call, every decision I made in my startup was a step towards reclaiming control. The chaos around me only made my resolve stronger. Later, I found Miriam in the living room, a resigned look on her face. "Evelyn," she said, her voice almost a whisper, "I'm sorry for what I said, but I need you to understand. I'm scared. I'm losing everything, and I don't know how to handle it." I nodded, softening. "I get it, Miriam. We're all scared, but we need to support each other, not tear each other apart." She sighed heavily, looking defeated. "I'll try, Evelyn, but I need you to try too." "Deal," I said, offering a tentative smile. The truce was fragile, but it was a start. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in weeks I felt a glimmer of hope. I was determined to rise above the ashes, no matter what it took. The phone buzzed incessantly on the table. I grabbed it, seeing the name of my startup's lead investor flashing on the screen. "Hello, Mr. Carter," I answered, trying to sound confident. "Evelyn, I have great news," he said, his excitement palpable. "We've just secured a major deal. Your startup's growth prospects are incredible. This could be a game changer." I felt a surge of relief wash over me. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. I can't wait to see the details." "Keep up the good work, Evelyn. You're on the right track," he said before hanging up. I sat back, absorbing the magnitude of what just happened. This deal could transform my life and provide the financial stability I so desperately needed. As I walked into the living room, Miriam was scrolling through her phone, looking more despondent than ever. For a moment, I considered sharing the good news with her, but then I remembered her history of turning any positive news into a source of resentment. I decided to keep the information to myself for the time being. Miriam glanced up and noticed my expression. "Why do you look so smug?" "Just had a good call with work," I replied, keeping it vague. She snorted. "Oh, rubbing your success in my face again, are we?" "That's not what I'm doing," I shot back. "I'm just focusing on something positive for once. You could try it too." She rolled her eyes. "Focusing on what, Evelyn? My husband's in jail, and I have no job. Where's the silver lining in that?" I clenched my teeth, biting back a sharp comment. Instead, I tried a different approach. "Maybe you could take this time to figure out what you really want to do with your life. Find something you're passionate about." Miriam scoffed. "Not everyone can be like you, Evelyn. Some of us don't have it all figured out." "I don't have it all figured out either," I said quietly. "But I'm trying. That's all anyone can do." She fell silent, staring at her phone as if it held the answers to all her problems. I decided to leave her to her thoughts and went to my room to review the details of the new deal. Days turned into a whirlwind of meetings, negotiations, and planning. The startup surged in growth, and with every success, I felt a step closer to financial independence. One evening, as I returned from another successful meeting, I found Miriam waiting for me in the living room. She looked desperate, her facade of strength crumbling. "Evelyn, I need your help," she said, her voice shaky. "I can't make rent, and Jared's trial is depleting what little we have left." I took a deep breath. This was the moment I had dreaded, but also anticipated. She needed me now more than ever, and it was time to confront her hypocrisy. "Miriam, I've supported you as much as I can," I said firmly. "But you need to understand that your lifestyle and choices have consequences." Tears welled up in her eyes. I know. I've made mistakes, but I need you now. Please, Evelyn." I felt a pang of guilt, but pushed it aside. "You have lied, manipulated, and taken advantage of everyone around you, especially our parents and me," I said, my voice cold. "Jared's actions hurt all of us. You showed no remorse until it affected you directly." Her face crumpled. "I don't know what to do." "Figure it out," I replied, arms crossed. "We supported you, hoping you would change, but you never did." Now you need to stand on your own 2 feet. Miriam stared at me, stunned. So you're abandoning me too? I'm not abandoning you. I'm making a stand, I said, resolute. The privilege of family support comes with responsibility, which you've ignored for too long. As I walked away, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. The drama had reached its peak, and the consequences were now unavoidable. The tables had turned, and this time I was in control. The news broke like a storm. Jared had been sentenced to a maximum term for his crimes. The media swarmed, the headlines splashed across every platform. Miriam's world crumbled as the public disgrace settled over her like a shroud. I watched the coverage from my office, feeling a grim sense of justice. Miriam's facade of superiority had finally shattered. She couldn't hide behind Jared anymore. The real repercussions of their actions were finally hitting home. Later that evening, I found Mom and Dad sitting in the living room, the TV muted, their faces drawn with worry. I took a deep breath before speaking. Dad, Mom, we need to talk about the future. We can't keep living in this constant turmoil. Dad nodded, his shoulders slumped. You're right, Evelyn. We need a fresh start, a place where we can rebuild without the dark cloud of Jared and Miriam hanging over us. Mom wiped a tear from her eye. But where do we go, Evelyn? What do we do? I have an idea, I said, my voice steady. I've had some success with my startup, and I think it's time we moved somewhere peaceful. A new place where we can focus on our lives and leave all this behind. They both looked at me with a mixture of hope and fear. I felt a surge of determination. My success wasn't just for me, it was for them too. They deserved a better life, free from the toxicity that had plagued us. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I worked tirelessly, finalizing our new home and ensuring everything was in place. When moving day arrived, it felt like a weight was lifting off my chest. This was our chance to start anew. As we settled into our new home, I could see the change in my parents. Dad seemed more relaxed, Mom more at ease. We were finally free from the chaos that Miriam and Jared had brought into our lives. One day, as we sat in our new favorite cafe, my mother reached across the table and took my hand. Evelyn, I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, I replied, smiling. We're in this together, always. But my thoughts lingered on Miriam. She was now completely alone. Her actions and decisions had finally caught up with her. She had lost everything, her husband, her friends, her dignity. A few days later, I received a call from an unknown number. Hesitantly, I answered. Evelyn, it's me, Miriam, a broken voice said on the other end. Miriam, I replied cautiously. I don't know what to do, she confessed, her voice shaking. I've lost everything. Can you help me? I took a deep breath, bracing myself. Miriam, I tried to help you. We all did, but you refused to change. I know, she whispered. I know, and I'm sorry. Please, I have nowhere else to go. Closing my eyes, I struggled with the decision. Miriam, you need to understand that actions have consequences. I can't keep bailing you out. Please, Evelyn, she pleaded. I'll do anything. Just help me this one last time. After a long pause, I finally said, I'll think about it, Miriam, but you need to show that you've truly changed. The silence on the other end was deafening before she finally replied, I will. Thank you, Evelyn. As I hung up, I felt a mix of emotions, relief, hope, and a lingering sense of caution. Perhaps this was the beginning of Miriam's redemption, or maybe it was just another cycle of her manipulations. Only time would tell. For now, I focused on the new life I was building with my parents. The tranquility of our new home filled me with a sense of peace I'd almost forgotten. The struggles of the past were behind us, and the future was ours to shape. Our new home was a sanctuary, a cozy house with a garden where Mom could indulge her love for flowers and plants, and a study where Dad spent hours reading without the shadows of the past looming over him. Life was finally settling into a peaceful rhythm. One sunny afternoon, as Mom and I were sipping coffee on the porch, the doorbell rang. I'll get it, I said, standing up. I opened the door to find Miriam standing there, looking worn and fragile. Evelyn, can we talk? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. I nodded, stepping aside to let her in. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where many family discussions had taken place. This time, though, the stakes felt different. Miriam, I began, last time we spoke, you said you wanted to change. Have you thought about what that means? She looked down at her hands, picking at her nails. I've been trying to figure it out. It's not easy, Evelyn. I don't know where to start. Start by being honest, I replied. Not just with us, but with yourself. Tears welled up in her eyes. I've made so many mistakes, hurt so many people. I don't know if I can come back from this. You can, I said gently, but it requires real effort. No more shortcuts, no more manipulations. Mom joined us, placing a comforting hand on Miriam's shoulder. We want to help, but you need to meet us halfway. Miriam looked up, her face wet with tears. I will, I promise. Dad entered the room, sensing the gravity of the conversation. Miriam, we all want to see you succeed. What's your plan? She took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. I've been looking for jobs. I'm willing to take anything to start rebuilding. That's a good start, Dad said, nodding. But you need more than just a job. You need to rebuild trust. Miriam looked each of us in the eye, her voice stronger now. I know, and I will. I'll prove it to you all, one step at a time. The days that followed were filled with cautious hope. Miriam stayed with us, contributing to the household and actively looking for work. Slowly, she began to rebuild her life. The transformation was gradual but visible. One evening, Mom suggested we go to the cafe that had become our favorite spot. As we sat there, enjoying the peaceful ambiance, Miriam suddenly spoke up. Evelyn, thank you. I know I've said it before, but I mean it. Thank you for not giving up on me. I smiled, feeling a genuine warmth. Family doesn't give up on family, Miriam. We're in this together. The cafe owner, recognizing us as frequent customers, brought over complimentary desserts. On the house, he said with a smile. You ladies seem to brighten up the place. We laughed and enjoyed the sweet gesture, savoring not just the desserts but the sense of normalcy and peace that had returned to our lives. The past was still a part of us, but it no longer defined us. As we walked back home, the setting sun casting a golden glow over the neighborhood, I felt a sense of completion. Our journey had been fraught with challenges, but we had emerged stronger, more united. We've come a long way, Dad said, breaking the comfortable silence. And it's because of you, Evelyn. Your strength kept us together. I shook my head. We all had our part to play. It was never just me. And now, Mom added, we can finally look forward to the future with hope. Miriam nodded, her eyes reflecting a new sense of determination. Absolutely, the best is yet to come. As we stepped into our home, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Life would continue to throw challenges our way, but we were ready to face them together. For the first time in a long while, I felt at peace, content with the simplicity of just being with my family. And that was more than enough.